Hi, I am Chris. I am the Membership Engagement Coordinator with the Worker Solidarity Network.
And I'm Ismail, and I'm the Community Engagement and Campaign Coordinator, as well as a legal advocate with the Worker Solidarity Network.
I think there's a lot of things workers should know to the best of their ability. But main things is basic rights, so rights around your wages. Knowing what the minimum wage is in BC is really important, so it's $17.40 currently. Also understanding the different types of wage theft that might occur, recognizing that you can't be not paid for working overtime or be asked to work during your break. If you are, then you have to get paid for that. So those certain things around your rights as a worker. There's also information around the Occupational Health and Safety Act. A lot of workers should try to familiarize themselves with. So it's a right to know, right to participate, and right to refuse unsafe work. So a lot of your safety, about safety in the workplace. And then also really important to understand that not just in the workplace, but as a person, you have rights under the Human Rights Code. So there's a lot of protections that you have against discrimination, and there are different types of protected grounds that you would have. And there's a lot more than you think there would be other than race and gender and sexual identity and stuff like that. I also want to highlight one thing to take note of is your rights against retaliation. So if you are seeking justice or speaking out about your issues or trying to file a complaint to the Employment Standards Branch, the employer is not allowed to retaliate against you for taking action.
I will maybe highlight 4 areas where we often see a lot of misconceptions. These are mischaracterization of employment, conditions of employment, misconceptions around your pay, and of course, status and your status as a migrant or a citizen and how that relates to your employment. So to start off mischaracterization, we often hear a lot of workers be mischaracterized as either independent contractors or as managers, because they'll be given a key and be told to open a place. And very often we find that they're actually not an independent contractor or manager, they are an employee. So that's one thing you might actually have misconceptions about what your role even is, and that's a very good one to make sure you understand. Conditions of employment, one we hear often is you've signed something that has standards below what the Employment Standards Act has set out. Conditions that fall below the Employment Standards Act are not legal and are not enforceable, even if you have signed a document. If you agree to get paid less than minimum wage, it doesn't matter. The branch is going to mandate that you get paid minimum wage. Misconceptions around pay include particular around deductions. Employers cannot deduct anything but taxes, Canadian pension program, and employment insurance. This includes they can't deduct poor performance, they can't refuse to pay overtime, they can't say that approved overtime only, and a whole lot more. Vacation pay, for example, is a big one under misconceptions around pay, where they will deduct 4% instead of giving you the additional 4%. So those are some good ones to keep an eye out. And of course, finally, the big one, you have rights regardless of your status. Whether you're on a work visa, holiday visa, don't have documentation at all, the Employment Standards Act applies to you.
One thing that we really encourage is to talk to your coworkers, see if they're experiencing the same issues, because most often than not that they are. I think it's important to document all of your hours and any kind of correspondence, any kind of messaging that you've had with your employer, and then file a complaint to the Employment Standards Branch. There's other ways that you can also advocate for yourself, like connecting with community, reaching out to other organizations that advocate for workers' rights and are fighting to change policy and stuff like that. So like WSN, we can help you with that if you're uncomfortable also for advocating just for yourself. You can also write a demand letter. If you want to take action, direct action in your workplace, you can write a letter stating the issues that you're experiencing, any kind of wages or things that you feel like you're owed, referring to the Employment Standards Act of the different laws that they're violating, and then issuing that to your employer, giving them a deadline, saying that they owe you, if they don't respond to this letter, that you will continue to escalate the process and go to the Employment Standards Branch. Also, you can also just join an organization. So become a member of WSN, and we can support other workers who are also facing the same issues and work on that collective power together.
No, overtime has to be on a voluntary basis. You cannot be scheduled overtime without your consent. And if you're asked to stay behind to work overtime, you do have the option to refuse.
All workers are protected under the Human Rights Code. You can try to speak to your manager about resolving the issue, but if you're uncomfortable in doing that, you can also reach out to the Human Rights Clinic. So the Human Rights Clinic can also support in navigating these issues. There are other organizations that help with human rights, like the Community Legal Assistance Society. They have a human rights clinic, the BC Human Rights Tribunal website, Vancouver Island Human Rights Coalition, and WSN. So we also have our legal advocates trained to help navigate how to handle discrimination in your workplace. But similarly, under the Employment Standards Act, we talked about retaliation in that process. You are also protected against retaliation when filing a complaint under the Human Rights Code.
Unpaid internships are actually illegal in British Columbia, barring a couple extremely narrow and well-defined exceptions that are listed in the employment standards regulations. So the text states that practicums that offer practical work experience as part of a formal educational requirement and formal training required for people training to be professionals in certain fields, such as doctors, lawyers, nurses, engineers, and accountants, that is something that is legal. Students enrolled in secondary school engaging in work at the school which they are enrolled, so work-study programs, work experience, occupational study classes are excluded from this restriction. However, outside of that, strictly legal. And unlike in some other jurisdictions, there's also no training wage in British Columbia. So if you are doing an internship, you have to be paid, and you cannot be paid below minimum wage.
I think if you haven't checked it out yet, if you go to workersolidarity.ca, our website is very curated, lots of information, really easy to access information of a collection of your rights as a worker. We also offer workshops directly. So we offer Know Your Rights workshops. We offer them to universities, to small community groups, to even like your workplace, even if you're interested. And there's other different types of resources that you can access, like BC Federation of Labor has a program called Alive After 5 for young workers. They also have, you can access WorkSafe BC, and the BC office of the Human Rights Commission have workshops around health and safety and human rights at work as well. You can also reach out to unions. Unions are a good resource of information and a great tool to have in accessing your rights as a worker. And then also, if you want to go to the Employment Standards website, you can access online the Employment Standards Act and the regulations. They have it's listed out all the laws there. It's free, it's accessible, and you can refer to that anytime you have any issues. We also know that a lot of students end up in precarious workplaces. So that means really low income, minimum wage usually, whether it be retail or service industry, and can be reliant on tips as a source of income. So one thing to be mindful of is just to keep track of the hours that you've worked. Always look at your pay stub. I know I used to be really bad at this myself, where I just toss it away and not look at it, but look at your pay stub. Keep track of your documentation of your hours and make sure that things are accurate as you're going along in your workplace.
Yeah, this is such a good question. I guess my tip would be many employers do take advantage of students and younger workers because they know that if you're young, you might not know your rights as well, or you might just be too shy and hesitant to act. And I just want to remind you as a student that just because you're young does not mean you are exempt from being treated fairly and with dignity. So you should know your rights. You should know the protections around retaliation, but you should also remember, as scary as it can be to act, the consequences of accepting poor treatment for fear of retaliation may end up being worse in the long run for you over the consequences of taking action. So remember your self-worth and try and take action anyhow.
So our advice to KPU students preparing to enter the workforce, one thing that would be really helpful is just to stay up to date on the Employment Standards Act. So recognizing the act is there, being familiar with the laws, but also knowing that the laws and policies do change. So sometimes there's wage increases, sometimes there's extra paid sick days, hopefully, maybe. But just making sure that you're up to date on that as much as you can. If you're unable to do that work yourself, you can also join an organization that's up to date on those rights, and also does the work in bettering for workers' rights all around. I think there are many different places and avenues you can join. I think another really important tip is just to break the stigma of openly talking about your issues, or not even issues, but just talking about your wages, the times off that you're taking, the allowances like vacations and stuff that you're getting. Good to start talking about that with your coworkers and breaking that stigma. It's very often that we feel really isolated in these issues, but very often they're the same experiences that your coworkers might be having. And also gives an opportunity to talk about organizing in your workplace and maybe even getting a union.
Yeah, I absolutely second that. It's so easy to fall into the pattern of not talking to your coworkers, especially out of the workplace. And I want to remind you that you and your fellow workers all share the same experiences. So talk to your coworkers. Don't be shy. Get to know them. Don't be shy of organizing events with them. Invite them out to dinner or to hang out all together. Because when it comes down to it, if you need to stand up for your rights, this will help you to stand up for your rights together. You and your coworkers, as Chris shared, share the same experiences. And you can use this to build important bonds. And who knows, if you're not unionized, this might lead to helping you build a union in your own workplace.